It's good to hear the old music again, even in context.
Fuck you!
After making my Godzilla King of the Monsters video, I had a few thoughts about Godzilla vs. Kong. The ones I want to explore in this video regard characters, specifically Mark Russell and Kevin. There was a very full cast of characters in Godzilla King of the Monsters, all with their own, admittedly straightforward, but meaningful characteristics. Most of these characters were new to King of the Monsters, with only Serizawa and Graham carrying over from 2014. This made sense given the building up of Monarch between films. So when Godzilla vs. Kong released, it was very disappointing to see all but two of them return, those two being Mark Russell and his daughter Madison. Given the importance Monarch should have in this world and the events that unfold in the film, it is abysmal that so many characters didn't pop up again. Then again, there's a lot about Godzilla vs. Kong that I would describe as abysmal. Of the two returning characters, Madison Russell gets the most screen time. Despite being an annoying git who mistreats her friend and has a worrying parasocial relationship with an older man from the internet, she actually comes off the better. Mark Russell, arguably the main character of the last film with whom we spent a lot of time, is barely in Godzilla vs. Kong. Worse, what little time we do get is spent ruining him. I was aware of this when I made my first round of videos, but now, having put a lot of time into examining King of the Monsters, I can say that I am even more upset about the desolation of Mark Russell. It's almost like one person made great efforts to finally craft a complicated character, only for someone else to come along and... Mark Russell in King of the Monsters was a man suffering from guilt. Guilt over having failed to save his son from monsters. Guilt over falling to drink and letting his daughter see him in such a state. Guilt over the breakup of his marriage. Guilt for having run away from his problems. This guilt compacts into a wrecking ball to smash him to pieces when his ex-wife and daughter are kidnapped. Worse, he is told about the Orca, a device he helped make, then dismantle because of its worrying implications, only for it to be rebuilt right under his drunken nose. All of this guilt is supercharged when he, and everyone else, discovers what his ex-wife's plans are for the Orca. But King of the Monsters is a well-written film, so all this guilt doesn't go to waste. It fuels Mark's every move, giving him a bit of a hero complex that makes him help out whenever and wherever he can. It also makes him snappy, at least initially. And it laser focuses on Godzilla, causing a deep-seated hatred of the Titan, a hatred that subsides through the course of the film. Indeed, most of his guilt is gone by the end of the film when he saves his daughter, but there is almost certainly some left over from his ex-wife's death. That last piece of guilt would follow him around as much as his son's death did, a reminder of his past failures that would make him ultra-protective of his daughter and others. Beyond his guilt, Mark Russell was a naturalist. By hobby or by career, either way it brought him to Monarch. He was an intelligent man who had completed a postgraduate course at university and was skilled enough at electronics or engineering to build the Orca. Matched with his own guilt-fed need to help people, he would use his skills to see things others didn't and solve problems others couldn't. He also didn't rely on himself alone, accepting others' knowledge and expertise to help and guide him. Imagine this man, this version of Mark Russell, being shown the Godzilla at the start of Godzilla vs. Kong. I imagine he would be gathering his forces, his trusted peers and co-workers, to decipher the mystery of Godzilla's unforeseen aggression. He would be comparing this to the knowledge they already had on the Big G, and to other animal behaviours. This version of Mark Russell would probably figure out something had caused this misbehaviour, that something had set off the King of the Monsters from his otherwise normal routine.
Show me his territorial routes. When an animal leaves its hunting ground, it's usually because it's threatened by something.
So what does Godzilla vs. Kong do with him? As I said, Mark Russell barely gets any screen time in the film. Most of the time he's either on his phone or looking at stuff with a mix of wonder, dread, or regret. Even in the last shot of the human cast, he's almost out of shot in the background. The only time he gets a talking part is at the start of the film, right after Godzilla attacks. Of the 5 lines Mark Russell gets, 2 of them are about Madison's safety.
I am just trying to help.
I don't want you to help, I want you to stay safe. I don't have any more. And the last thing that I need is to be worrying about you.
Because of this, I'll give the film some credit for carrying over that trait, although it doesn't do much with it other than these token lines and Mark Russell looking at his phone later. He doesn't actively try to do anything to make sure his daughter is safe. The rest of Mark's lines concern Godzilla.
We needed a plan to keep peace with these things, and the best one we had just went down in flames.
And right now Godzilla's out there and he's hurting people and we don't know why.
Which includes this exchange.
If there has to be a pattern here.
There doesn't.
A reason why he was provoked.
There isn't.
How do you know that?
Because creatures like people can change.
Again, I ask, would the Mark Russell from Godzilla King of the Monsters be saying this? If anything, he'd be the one uttering Madison's lines. His lines also don't match up very well. He's dismissive of Madison's points, saying there doesn't need to be a reason why creatures change, then follows this up by saying they don't know why he's changed. Simply put, he says they don't need to know why, but they're trying to figure out why. Make sense to you? The writing is awful in Godzilla vs. Kong, and this is a perfect example of it. It's thanks to it that we don't have Mark Russell from King of the Monsters here. We have the Skinwalker version. I've heard that the line, "creatures like people can change," is meant to link to Godzilla letting Kong live at the end of their fight, and Kong dropping the axe at the end of the film. And that might be alright, except it really isn't. Kong drops his axe because Godzilla helped Kong, because Kong helped Godzilla, because Kong listened to the girl, because the human cast could tell Mechagodzilla was the real issue, not Godzilla. See? Causal chain. There was a reason. Mark saying creatures can change after saying there's no reason for it doesn't match. However, Godzilla letting Kong live after their fight does match this line. Godzilla had no reason to let Kong live. In fact, he had more reason to blast his head off or cave his chest in because Kong was still fighting back and not submitting. Godzilla letting him go was a stupid move, which the film proves when Kong tries to get up and keep fighting. Why do films keep proving themselves wrong? This line is bad because it makes no sense for Mark to be saying it, for it to be a thing at all. And if it is a thematic connection, then it's a broken one. And if it is thematic, we once again have a character being sacrificed on the altar of themes. Thanks, film. Mark Russell isn't the only character to get this treatment. Mechagodzilla is the final boss of Godzilla vs. Kong, the great and terrible man-made monster. But he's not entirely man-made. He is controlled through a series of systems rooted through the skull of one of Ghidorah's heads. Despite theories to the contrary, there is only one non-vaporized Ghidorah head available to do this. Kevin. Kevin the Curious. Kevin the Slow-Witted. Kevin the Cautious. Kevin the Reluctant. With these traits to his name, when Kevin takes control of Mechagodzilla, it would be very interesting to see how he would act. Taking revenge on the human that had control of him and potentially tortured him would definitely be at the top of his list of actions. But after that, and escaping his underground prison, what would Kevin do? Probably not this. It makes me sad thinking about all the ways in which Kevin's personality could have come through here. Instead, we get maniacal mechanical laughter. Like so many things in this film, I'm left to wonder why. Thankfully, or should I say unfortunately, we have been told why. I don't normally look into third-party stuff when examining media because I want to concentrate on what the media, the art, tells us, not someone else's goals for it. It's not about the intent, it's about the interpretation. However, in an interview, Adam Wingard, the director of Godzilla vs. Kong, spoke about Mechagodzilla, and it makes for depressive listening.
When my first meeting with Legendary, like they had an outline for the film when I came on. I was like, "Is there any other monsters in the movie?" Is he giving me my NDA? And he's like, "This one's gonna have Mechagodzilla in it." Wait a minute, wait. Mechagodzilla is gonna be in a MonsterVerse movie? Some of the main points in this script came from weird aesthetic ideas that we came up with that would be cool, and then they somehow worked them way into the main plot. So, for instance, the Ghidorah skull. It was actually like my original assistant who came up with the idea of like a Ghidorah skull being used. We needed a way for the villains to be able to talk with the people in Hollow Earth. And then we thought, oh, well, maybe they took one of Ghidorah's, his skull, and they've used, they're harnessing the psionic energy. And that just kind of evolved into like, you know what the coolest place to pilot Mechagodzilla is going to be is from a big monster skull. The VFX team, they always said Mechagodzilla was a dick, you know, like they said like that was the way they described him, because like the way that he fights is kind of dirty and just immediately indiscriminately starts murdering like as many people as he can. He kind of laughs, you know. I like his like mechanical laugh that he has. I mean,
you know, he kicks Godzilla's ass as well, which is, you know, he's a formidable dude.
Well, that's what he's designed for, you know.
Yeah.
That was probably the hardest fight to choreograph. And then the fight ends up being a bit more one-sided, and we kind of ended up just going in the direction of Mechagodzilla is really designed to kick Godzilla's ass. But originally that fight had a lot more back and forth. Like Godzilla had a couple more, you know, hits in on Mechagodzilla, but it kind of just didn't work for whatever reason.
The director being surprised a character is going to be in his film sounds odd to me. But that's alright. Working within rules or limitations isn't necessarily bad. It can sometimes be beneficial, it just depends on how they're worked with. Which all falls apart when he says his assistant came up with using Ghidorah's skull and for completely different and incorrect reasons. Actually, that explains this.
This next was so long they communicated telepathically. There's one here, another one inside of that thing.
Regards Mechagodzilla being a dick, I've listened to the clip multiple times and still can't work out if either Wingard's choreography made the CGI team think Mechagodzilla was a dick, or the CGI team made Mechagodzilla look like a dick. So, either Wingard made him a dick and disregarded any other possible character traits, or the CGI team decided for him. Neither is good. Then we have the bit about the fighting and I want to jump out a window. The back and forth version of the fight not looking good or right is a failing of the choreographer. But instead of getting someone else in, they went for an unimaginative beatdown version of the fight, which annoyed a lot of people. Worse, the excuse is Mechagodzilla was designed to defeat Godzilla, therefore Kevin can beat him easily. If Tesla has taught us anything, it's that you can design a thing to do a thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean it'll do the thing first time, or 20 times. This is especially true if you swap out the software. In this case, the software is a human mind controlling a robot that they know all the controls for, and it's being swapped out for what should be a confused monster in an alien body. I don't care how well designed it is, that thing is going to crash and burn. In short, Mechagodzilla was forced on Wingard. He took ideas from an assistant that didn't know what they were talking about, gave Mechagodzilla a personality that didn't fit the character or situation, and choreographed a terrible fight because they couldn't make a better one. Bloody hell's teeth on fire. I possibly wouldn't be so annoyed at all this if it wasn't for Additional knowledge. Remember I mentioned theories to do with Ghidorah's heads? Whilst looking for clips for my King of the Monsters praise, a Goji Center video talking about Ghidorah's possible return was recommended to me. Intrigued, I watched it and I'm thankful I live on the ground floor. One part of the video was interesting, that of the regenerative properties of Ghidorah, which makes some sense. The rest, however, was awful.
If you didn't know already, there are two skulls involved here. In the beginning of the book, Walter Simmons, CEO of Apex Cybernetics, had an in-person meeting with a shady individual, Alan Jonah. In this scene, Alan Jonah offered Simmons not one, but two heads. So the question is, where did this second one come from? The other head was most likely found by Alan Jonah and his crew at an undisclosed site. It could have been anywhere, but the most likely place would have been somewhere in Antarctica.
Congrats, you made shit up. This apparently high quality video with custom graphics and plentiful editing is a complete waste of time because it's all bullshit. It takes a bad and incorrect idea from a director's assistant and builds a whole house of conjecture on it. They have to preface every statement with maybe and possibly because they know what they're saying is nonsense. Goji Center's video goes to show just how awful the story of Godzilla vs. Kong is that it needs quote-unquote facts being pulled out of the ether to make it work. Bloody hell, film. This has been a quick visit back to old stomping grounds. I doubt this will be the last time I do a video on Godzilla vs. Kong. Every time I think I've seen everything the film has to throw at me, it pulls more shit out of its pockets. Maybe one day I'll make one big video on it. Until then, feel free to stick around and have a look at my other content. Like, share, comment, and especially subscribe if you haven't already. Links to my Patreon and Etsy store will be in the description. Last but not least, thank you for watching.